Hello, and welcome to Sober Without God. This series is designed to help you fall asleep while listening to stories about the scientists and non believers and many others who have made an impact on our world. If you're like me and have trouble going to sleep or staying asleep, videos like this may help you relax while also learning. It is my hope that hearing these stories in a calm and peaceful way will help guide you to the relaxation and sleep you're looking for. Before we begin, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe and leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from. It's a big help to this channel and will encourage me to make more like this. My goal is to be able to make these videos ad free as the channel continues to grow. These videos are here to pay homage to some of the greatest thinkers of our time while helping you relax and meditate or fall to sleep. So now let's settle in to a comfortable position and get ready for some peaceful rest. Welcome to James Randi, the Skeptic's Journey. Tonight, we begin a journey through the life of James Randi, a man who began his career as a magician, but became one of the most influential skeptics of our time. As you settle in, find a comfortable position. Take a slow, deep breath in and gently let it out. This is a story about magic, about truth, and about a man who devoted his life to pulling back the curtain on deception. A child of curiosity. James Randi was born Randall James Hamilton Zwing on August 7th, 1928, in Toronto, Canada. He grew up in a working class household, a quiet, inquisitive boy who loved books more than sports. From an early age, Randy was fascinated by the mysteries of the world. Stories of Houdini, stage illusions, and the wonders of the unexplained. At the age of 12, a serious bicycle accident left him hospitalized for nearly a year. It was a challenging time, but it gave him something rare: long stretches of stillness to think, read, and dream. Randy said later, reflecting on those days, I had time, and time can be a gift if you use it to learn. It was during this period that he read voraciously magic books, mythology, and anything he could find on famous escape artists. And one name in particular kept appearing again and again: Harry Houdini. Randi often said that Houdini was his greatest childhood hero. Randi once explained, Houdini wasn't just a magician. He was an investigator, a man who refused to let people be fooled by fakes. I admired that. By his teenage years, Randi was already performing magic for friends and at small events. He quickly developed a reputation for his skill with illusions and escapes. Imagine young Randi now in a dimly lit living room with a small audience of family and neighbors, rope tied tightly around his wrists, a lock on the chain. Moments later, he's free, grinning at their astonishment. That thrill of not just performing, but revealing would shape his entire life, becoming the amazing Randi. By the 1950s, Randi the stage name The Amazing Randi. He traveled across, was escaping from a locked coffin, submerged underwater, a tribute that a performer he wanted to understand the psychology of illusion. I don't do magic. I do tricks. The magic is in the mind of the audience. Through his early career, he focused on entertainment, but Randi soon grew troubled by a pattern he couldn't ignore. Magicians use tricks for fun, but some people use the very same methods: sleight of hand, misdirection, showmanship, to exploit others. He began to encounter self proclaimed psychics, faith healers, and mediums who claimed supernatural powers, but whose methods looked suspiciously familiar to a trained magician. I'd watch them on stage, Randi recalled, and I could see the trick. It was right there. And I'd think, how many people are losing their money, their hope, their dignity to this? That's when I knew I couldn't stay silent. Think of that moment. A man whose life was built on creating illusions, deciding that he could no longer let people be deceived. It was a turning point when James Randi became more than an entertainer. He became an investigator. By the 1960s, Randi's reputation had grown. He was seen as a modern-day Houdini, a magician unafraid to challenge those who used deception for personal gain. He began writing articles exposing fraudulent psychics and performing people could be misled. His approach was bold, often confrontational. Yet beneath it was a deep sense of compassion. Randi often said, "I don't hate the people who believe in these things. I hate the people who exploit them." This belief that truth should protect the vulnerable would drive his work for the rest of his life. Take a breath. Picture the amazing Randi in his signature black turtleneck and a long white beard, eyes twinkling behind his glasses as he reveals the simple method behind a seemingly impossible psychic feat. A small man with a very big mission. Even the most convincing illusion can be unraveled if you dare to look closely enough. James Randi had made his name as the amazing Randy, dazzling audiences with his escapes and illusions. But in the 1970s, his career shifted. Randy wasn't satisfied just entertaining. He wanted to expose deception, especially when it hurt people. I can fool you, Randy once said, but I'll tell you I'm fooling you. That's the difference. The others don't. They take your money and your trust and give you nothing real in return. This distinction between honest illusion and harmful fraud became the foundation of his life's work. One of Randy's most famous targets was Uri Geller, an Israeli performer who claimed to bend spoons and perform psychic feats with the power of his mind. To the public, Geller was mesmerizing. He appeared on television shows around the world, stunning audiences by seemingly bending cutlery, starting broken watches, and reading minds. But to Randy, the tricks were familiar. I'd been doing spoon bending since I was a teenager, Randy said. It's a good trick, but it's not psychic. It's sleight of hand. It's showmanship. And I couldn't watch someone get rich convincing people it was supernatural. In 1973, Randy worked with Johnny Carson, himself a former magician, to prepare for Geller's appearance on The Tonight Show. Carson, advised by Randy, insisted that Geller use only objects provided by the show. No personal props, no control over the setup. When Geller arrived, the conditions were not what he expected. In a video you can now watch anywhere, you can see Geller say, "I don't feel strong tonight," visibly uncomfortable as his tricks failed under the controlled environment. Randy later described it as a turning point. He said, It wasn't about humiliating him. It was about showing that under real scrutiny, the magic evaporates. This moment made headlines. It also painted a target on Randy's back. But he didn't care. Imagine Randy backstage, calm, collected, watching as an entire nation saw the limits of a man claiming paranormal power. To Randy, this wasn't cruelty, it was truth in action. Randy's investigations didn't stop with psychics. He turned his attention to faith healers, preachers who claimed divine power to cure illnesses, often collecting large sums of money from desperate followers. One of his most famous exposés involved televangelist Peter Popoff, who appeared to know intimate details about his audience members. To believers, it seemed miraculous. But Randy noticed something odd. Popoff wore a small earpiece during his revivals. Working with a team, Randy used a radio scanner to intercept the signal, revealing that details through gathered from prayer cards filled out by attendees before the show. Randy's team recorded the transmissions. In one broadcast, Popoff's wife could be heard saying, "Hello, Petey. She's got cancer in the ovaries. You might want to say that God is touching her ovaries." Randy took the evidence, playing the tapes live on air. Randy often spoke about why these deceptions mattered. He said, "It's not just about money. It's about people's lives, their hope, their dignity. When someone tells a parent their child can be healed if they just believe harder, and then that child dies, that's cruelty beyond words." This compassion, hidden beneath his sharp wit, drove him. He wasn't trying to ruin fun. He was trying to protect people from exploitation. Take a breath. Inhale. Exhale. Think of Randy, a small man with big presence, standing up against corporations, preachers, and performers far more powerful than himself. All because he believed people deserved the truth. No illusion, no matter how convincing, can stand forever against the light of truth. By the late 1990s, James Randi had become one of the most recognizable faces of skepticism. He wasn't just exposing frauds, he was inspiring others to question, demand evidence. And then he made an offer that would become legendary. In 1996, James Randi created the James Randi Educational Foundation, the JREF, and the $1 Million Challenge. The foundation's mission to promote critical thinking and investigate claims of the paranormal, the supernatural, and the pseudoscientific. And at its heart was the challenge. A simple offer. Anyone who could demonstrate paranormal ability under scientifically controlled conditions would receive $1 million. Randi put it bluntly: if you can really do what you say you can do, come prove it. The money is yours. No tricks, no excuses. Over the years, hundreds applied. Psychics, dowsers, mediums, even people who claimed they could control lightning or read minds. None succeeded. Randi loved to remind applicants, quote, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Bring me the evidence and the check is yours, unquote. It wasn't a gimmick. It was a gauntlet laid down for anyone who profited from paranormal claims. How did the tests work? The beauty of the challenge was in its fairness. Applicants worked with Randy's team to design a test that they agreed upon in advance. No surprise conditions, no hidden tricks. If they passed, the money was theirs. Yet every single time when the controls were in place, the abilities evaporated. There were many memorable moments. One dowser claimed he could find water with a simple rod. He was tested in a warehouse with pipes under the floor, carrying water at random. He failed every trial. Another man claimed he could make clouds disappear with his mind. On the day of the test, he couldn't and blamed the weather. Randy would often smile and say, "They always have an excuse, but excuses don't win you $1 million." To Randy, the challenge wasn't about the money. It was about accountability. If someone truly had paranormal powers, they could prove it. If they couldn't, it exposed how fragile those claims really were. As he explained, if you can't do it when people are watching, maybe you can't do it at all. The challenge drew worldwide attention. It wasn't just believers and skeptics who watched. It was the public. People who wanted to know if even one claim would stand. None ever did. The unclaimed million became a symbol of Randy's point that belief isn't proof, and that truth can withstand scrutiny while falsehood crumbles under it. Take a breath, hold, let it out. Imagine Randy sitting at a table, hands folded, listening quietly as a self-proclaimed psychic makes their case. He wasn't mocking them. He was giving them a chance to prove themselves. And time and again, reality told the story. That which is real doesn't fear the test of evidence. James Randi wasn't just a performer or an investigator. He was a storyteller. And like any good storyteller, he knew the power of words to expose, to teach, and to inspire. In the 1980s and 1990s, Randi turned to writing and film to bring his mission to an even wider audience. Randi's first major book, Flim Flam, was a sharp, witty takedown of paranormal claims. From psychics to UFO abductions, he dismantled each story with logic and often a magician's understanding of how people can be fooled. I don't mind if you believe in ghosts or psychic powers, he wrote. But if you do, at least know how easy it is to be deceived. Belief without evidence is the easiest con of all. He followed with The Faith Healers. This book was an expose of preachers who claimed miraculous powers. This book wasn't just criticism, it was evidence. Randi documented how these healers used secret earpieces, staged confessions, and emotional manipulation to convince audiences that God was speaking through them. He often said, "When you see a man in a suit take money from the sick and desperate, you're not witnessing faith, you're witnessing theft." Randi also used television and documentaries to bring his work to life. He appeared on shows like 60 Minutes and 2020, often revealing the mechanics of psychic scams live on camera. In one memorable segment, he duplicated the miracles, magic tricks. If I can do it, and I don't claim supernatural powers, he said, maybe you should question those who do. Imagine Randi on stage, beard flowing, his magician's hands showing the audience how easily the extraordinary becomes ordinary when you know where to look. Randi often joked that his job made him unpopular among certain groups. "Some people call me a debunker," he said with a wry grin, "but I prefer investigator. I'm not here to ruin fun. I'm here to ruin lies. To his fans, that honesty made him magnetic. He didn't just say, "This is false." He showed you how it was false. And he did it with a sense of humor that softened even his harshest critiques. Despite his public persona as a relentless skeptic, those who knew him described Randi as warm and generous. He loved conversation, good company, and unsurprisingly, a good trick or two. He often reminded young magicians, quote, "Magic is honest deception. We tell people it's a trick, and they thank us for it. That's the only kind of deception I can live with," unquote. Take a moment. Picture Randi at his desk, scribbling notes for his next book. The same spark of curiosity he had as a boy, still alive in his eyes. Even as he exposed deception, he believed deeply in the power of wonder. A trick is harmless when it's shared in honesty, but the truth, when revealed, is the greatest magic of all. James Randi did not walk softly when it came to pseudoscience, and he did not hold back when it came to religion, especially when it crossed into exploitation. "I don't care what you believe," Randi often said, "until what you believe starts taking money, health, or dignity from people. Then it becomes my problem." This was the core of his skepticism, not to insult belief, but to protect people from those who weaponized it. Randi saved some of his strongest words for televangelists and faith healers. To him, these weren't merely harmless preachers. They were performers, using tricks of the trade to prey on the sick, the poor, and the desperate. When he exposed Peter Papa's secret earpiece, he didn't just reveal a scam. He pulled back the curtain on an entire industry of spiritual manipulation. He said, "You could see the look on people's faces when they realized it was all a trick. They were crushed. They'd given him their last dollars, their deepest prayers, and he was laughing all the way to the bank." Imagine being in one of those stadiums, thousands of people praying for a miracle and knowing that behind the stage, someone is feeding a man names and ailments through an earpiece. To Randy, that was unconscionable. Though Randy grew up in a Christian household, he was outspoken about his lack of faith. "I'm an atheist," he said plainly in one interview. "But more than that, I'm a skeptic. Show me the evidence. Until then, I don't buy it." He criticized religious institutions for discouraging doubt and rewarding blind faith. To Randy, belief without evidence wasn't virtuous. It was dangerous. He often said, if someone tells you not to question, that's exactly when you should start. Randy took this message on the road, appearing at skeptic conferences and debates around the world. Whether speaking to packed auditoriums or intimate gatherings, his approach was the same: clear, sharp, and laced with humor. He could dismantle an argument with a single sentence, but he did it with a twinkle in his eye, never forgetting that the goal wasn't humiliation, it was education. By the 2000s, Randy had become a patron saint of skepticism. Younger voices in the movement, scientists, writers, and fellow magicians, often cited him as their greatest influence. He told them, don't just call out what's false. Show people why it matters. Show them what truth feels like. Take a moment. Picture Randy at a podium, a white bearded magician with the energy of a man half his age, turning a lecture on skepticism into something alive, something urgent. His words weren't just critiques, they were a call to arms, to think, to question, to protect. Skepticism isn't cynicism, it's care. Care for the truth, care for people, care for a world that deserves better than comforting lies. As the years went by, James Randi slowed his public work, but his fire for truth never dimmed. He spent his later life mentoring young skeptics, writing, and speaking when his health allowed. And perhaps most importantly, He reflected on his life, on his work, on what it all meant. In 2010, at the age of 81, Randy, Randy publicly came out as gay. He said, "I kept it quiet for too long, but I realized that honesty isn't something I can preach to others and not practice myself." This honesty, late in life, was deeply moving to his fans. It showed Randy not just as a skeptic, but as a human being who had wrestled with his own truths. Randy often spoke candidly about death. "I don't believe in an afterlife," he said, "and that doesn't scare me. It makes life here, now, that much more precious." He believed that living well, honestly, thoughtfully, compassionately, was far more meaningful than any promise of eternal life. Imagine Randy in his quiet moments at home, surrounded by books, reflecting on the strange, wonderful journey his life had been. From a boy reading about Houdini to a man who spent his life challenging the false and protecting the vulnerable. In his later years, Randy received awards and honors for his contributions to skepticism and education, but he often brushed them off with humor. "I didn't do this for awards," he'd say. "I did it because somebody had to." James Randi passed away in 2020 at the age of 92. The news rippled across the world. Scientists, magicians, skeptics, and everyday people shared stories of how Randy had inspired them to think critically, to question boldly, and to never settle for comforting lies. He left behind not just a body of work, but a movement. Randy's legacy is one of courage. He taught us that it's not cruel to challenge falsehood. It's compassionate. That skepticism, at its core, is about caring for people enough to protect them from deception. And that wonder doesn't die when you remove the supernatural. It grows. He once said, "When you strip away the fraud, you're left with the real magic of reality." And that's enough. Take a deep breath. Think of Randy, white-bearded, sharp-eyed, playful even in his final years, smiling as he leaves the stage one last time. The trickster who told the truth, the magician who pulled back the curtain, the skeptic who cared. Let's take a few more minutes to think about some of the more things that James Randi added to his life and to his career and to our memories. One of Randi's most famous clashes was with Sylvia Brown, a psychic who claimed to speak to the dead and foresee the future. She built a career on these claims, appearing on television and selling books to millions. But Randi saw her differently. He said she was a performer, a cold reader, using tragedy and grief as props. Randi publicly challenged Brown to take the $1 million challenge. To everyone's surprise, she agreed. But year after year, she postponed, made excuses, or simply ignored his invitations to set up the test. Randi would later quip, "I'm still waiting for Sylvia to call me back. I suspect I'll be waiting a very long time." The late 1990s and early 2000s saw a surge of paranormal TV, ghost hunters, psychic detectives, and shows that blurred the line between entertainment and truth. Randi saw it as dangerous. These shows don't just entertain, he said. They convince people. They sell fear and fantasy as reality. And they do it without shame. He responded with lectures, writings, and media appearances, breaking down the tricks behind these phenomena. Picture Randi watching one of these ghost hunting shows, sighing, then smiling as he sketches out how he'll explain the trickery to his next audience. It wasn't just about disproving. It was about teaching people how to see clearly. Randi faced lawsuits, harassment, and even threats for his investigations. At one point, Uri Geller sued him for defamation in a case that dragged on for years. But Randi wouldn't back down. He said, "I've been threatened, sued, and shouted at, but none of that compares to watching a charlatan steal from someone who's grieving. That's worth the fight." Take a slow breath. Think of what it means to live a life like that, knowing that every time you pull back the curtain, someone powerful might come after you, and yet doing it anyway. That was Randi. Truth is rarely the easy path, but it's the one worth walking. By the early 2000s, James Randi had become more than a lone investigator. He became a rallying point for a growing movement of skeptics, scientists, magicians, educators, and ordinary people who wanted to shine a light on deception. And they all had a home at the James Randi Educational Foundation. One of Randi's greatest contributions was TAM, the amazing meeting. It began as a modest conference for skeptics and quickly grew into one of the most important gatherings in the community. At TAM, you could hear lectures from scientists debunking pseudoscience, watch magicians teach how illusions worked, and share conversations with some of the sharpest critical thinkers in the world. And at the heart of it all, Randi, with his white beard, sharp eyes, and playful smile. He would walk the halls like an old master among students, greeting newcomers with warmth. Randi loved mentoring young skeptics. He told them, "You don't have to, you can be funny, you can be charming, just don't be silent." Many of today's leading skeptic voices, authors, podcasters, educators, credit Randi with encouraging them to speak out. Imagine being there in a packed hotel ballroom, lights dimmed, Randi stepping up to the podium. Before he spoke, he'd pause, adjust his glasses, and deliver a one-liner that had the whole room laughing. Then, with that same twinkle, he'd get serious, pulling the audience deep into the urgency of his message. Randi's wit made him disarming. He could dismantle an argument with a joke sharper than any insult. On psychic predictions, he said, "I too can see into the future. I predict they'll be wrong again." On faith healers, he said, "God must be running a very selective clinic because only the ones who pay seem to get cured." On his own stubbornness, he said, "People call me pig-headed. They're right, but at least I'm not a pig-headed psychic." Humor was his way of easing the sting of hard truths. He understood that skepticism isn't just about being right, it's about being heard. His charisma and humor drew people in, even when they disagreed with him. And once they were listening, he could teach them to think critically, to question boldly, and to protect themselves from deception. Take a breath. Picture yourself at one of those amazing meetings, hearing Randy speak. You laugh, you learn, you leave with a new way of seeing the world. That was his gift. Truth telling doesn't have to be cruel. It can be kind. It can even be funny. James Randi spent a lifetime pulling apart illusions, exposing frauds, revealing tricks, and tearing down false claims. But for him, skepticism was never about destroying wonder. It was about redirecting it. Some people call me a cynic, he said. They're wrong. A cynic believes nothing. A skeptic wants to believe, but only after seeing the evidence. The distinction was everything to Randi. Randi believed that skepticism wasn't the absence of wonder. It was the foundation for a deeper, more meaningful kind. He said, when you demand evidence, when you look closely, the world becomes even more amazing. Because what's real is always more interesting than what's fake. This philosophy guided his work. He didn't want people to stop believing in everything. He wanted them to believe wisely. For Randi, life didn't need the supernatural to be beautiful. Have you seen a sunrise through a telescope? He once asked a student. Have you watched the stars through good glass on a cold night? That's magic, and it's real. He often argued that false claims, psychics, faith healers, mystics, actually cheapened the true wonder of existence. Why settle for parlor tricks, he asked, when the universe is offering you the real thing? Take a moment. Imagine Randi sitting under a dark sky, looking up at the stars, not as a believer in cosmic fate, not as a mystic, but as a man who understood that reality, just as it is enough to take your breath away. Randi also spoke about the moral side of skepticism. For him, doubt wasn't just intellectual, it was ethical. He said, when someone tells you not to question, that's when you need to question the most. Because blind belief is the easiest way for good people to be hurt. This is why Randi was unrelenting when confronting faith healers, mediums, and those who preyed on the grieving. He understood that unchecked belief could be dangerous. Of course, his truths came wrapped in humor. On horoscopes, he said, if the stars could really predict my future, I'd still be taller and rich. On psychic detectives, he said, funny how they can find a body on television, but never in time to save a life. On faith-based claims, he said, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and no, scripture doesn't count as evidence. These one-liners cut deep, but always with purpose. At the end of the day, Randi's guiding principle was simple. Believe what you can prove. Question what you can't. And above all, care for the people who don't know how to protect themselves from deception. Skepticism isn't about tearing down. It's about building a world where truth matters more than comforting lies. As James Randi had entered the final chapter of his life, he often reflected on his journey from the boy in Toronto, staring at the pages of Houdini's daring escapes, to the man who stood on the world stages, exposing lies and defending truth. It had been, as he once said with a smile, quote, a pretty good trick, unquote. Randi didn't want statues or monuments. He said, I'd like to be remembered as someone who cared enough to ask for proof, and as someone who cared enough about people to protect them from those who didn't. For him, skepticism wasn't just intellectual curiosity. It was compassion in action. Before his passing in 2020, Randi often spoke about the next generation of skeptics. He told them, you don't need to be me. You don't need to be a magician or a scientist or a showman. You just need to care. And you need to be brave enough to speak when others won't. Today, the skeptic movement he helped shape continues his work, carrying forward his message that truth matters, that questioning matters, that people deserve honesty. Imagine Randi now, sitting in a quiet room, watching the movement he helped build grow beyond him. A magician no longer on stage, but still pulling back the curtains for those who need light. He passed away, leaving behind a life rich with courage, laughter, and purpose. And though his voice is gone, his message endures in the classrooms, the conferences, the quiet conversations where someone dares to ask, but how do you know? Take a deep, slow breath in and out. Think of what it means to live like Randi did. Curious, uncompromising, compassionate. He showed us that truth isn't always easy, but it is always worth the effort. And that even when the world seems full of illusions, there is magic in reality itself. As you lie here, let your body grow heavy. Release the tension in your jaw. Let your shoulders sink deeper into the mattress. Take another slow breath in. Hold and let it out gently. Above you, picture a night sky, endless and clear. Each star is a question, each constellation a story. And here you are, a small but vital part of this vast and wondrous reality. James Randi believed in the power of questions and in the courage it takes to ask them. Let that courage rest in you now. Quiet, steady. You are safe. You are here. And the truth, beautiful and unembellished, is enough.